welcome to our channel. Today's topic is how to make espresso the way that Italians make it. The Italian espresso recipe is the classic recipe. It balances coffee strength and flavor perfectly. Modern North American espresso is too concentrated. It's basically what a ristretto was a few years ago. However, it can be excellent in coffee shops if you want to use it for espresso-based drinks, because it gives them that nice espresso flavor. Some people prefer black espresso, and personally, I prefer the classic recipe the most. When you want to make a really good espresso, you need to consider a few things. The three most important things are a good technique, a great recipe, and really good ingredients. Let's start with the recipe. The classic espresso brew ratio is 1:3. This means that you'll use about 7 grams of ground coffee to pull your 1 fluid ounce of espresso shot. The shot will need to be pulled from 20 to 30 seconds. If you want your espresso to taste the same way that the Italian one does, then for 1 fluid ounce of espresso shot, you'll need to use about 7 to 9 grams of dry coffee. Compare this to the modern espresso, which uses 14 to 19 grams of coffee. So let's take a look at the recipe for solo, doppio, and a triplo. For a solo, you'll use 7 grams of coffee and you'll extract about 1 fluid ounce of coffee. For a doppio, you'll use 14 grams of coffee and you'll get double the amount of the shot. And for a triple shot, you'll use 20 grams of coffee and you'll get 2.5 fluid ounces at the end. If you're using a bottomless portafilter, then you might want to use a triple basket. And you want your dose to be 20 to 24 grams of ground coffee. If you make a triple espresso, it's actually better to use a coarser grind. This is because thicker coffee is going to create too much resistance in the puck. And basically the extraction is going to stop if there's too much resistance. The reason that I give you a range is because filter baskets are a little bit different. They're not all exactly the same. Some are slightly larger and then some are slightly smaller. Typically a single basket holds about 7 to 9 grams of dry coffee. Double baskets hold 14 to 18 grams of coffee. And then the triple baskets hold from 20 to 24 grams of coffee. But some baskets can hold up to 28 grams of coffee, which is quite the range. So it's actually important to follow the manufacturer's instructions on how to weight your dry coffee. And by the way, I highly recommend using a scale when measuring your coffee. It's much more accurate than volumetric measurements. Using a scale will ensure consistency and you'll also know that your dose was perfect. That's pretty much it for the recipe. Let's look at the technique now. Grinding coffee. The most important thing during espresso extraction is the grind size. You can pull your shot slowly by grinding your coffee finely, or you can pull it much more quickly by grinding it coarser. Weighting your dose. Before adding your coffee in the portafilter, make sure your basket is clean. If it's a little bit wet, then make sure you dry it off completely. Place your portafilter on a kitchen scale. After that, tare the scale. After that, add your coffee. Then adjust your dose depending on your portafilter. Ground coffee distribution and tamping. The ground coffee in the portafilter is likely not distributed perfectly evenly, and many times it can have little clumps. We need to work on the grounds to declump them and distribute them evenly. One way to do that is to tap on the sides of the portafilter, and that's going to even out the coffee grinds. And that's going to remove the air pockets that might be stuck inside. You're going to notice that the volume of your grounds is slightly going to decrease once you do that. A coffee bed should look like this. Alternatively, you could also use a distribution tool like this one, and it's going to make it so much easier. Tamping. Tamping is almost as important as grind size. However, the tamping technique is often misunderstood. Too often, we see people who focus too much on the amount of pressure that's used when tamping, and they forget about making it even. However, tamp evenness is even more important than the force you tamp with. If you don't get the perfect tamping force, then your shot might turn out a little bit longer or a little bit shorter. But this is not critical, as the shot is still going to be good. It just won't have the exact strength or volume that you desire. However, if the tamper goes deeper in one of the sides, then the coffee is going to choose that side also, because there is less resistance there. When you tamp, make sure that your tamper is well leveled in the coffee puck. The purpose of tamping is to get rid of all air pockets and also to create this even coffee puck. It's vital to create a uniform coffee puck so that it extracts evenly. Insert the tamper in the portafilter and press it down evenly. Try to apply 20 to 30 pounds of pressure. If you want to be super precise, you can practice by tamping on a scale. Or you could buy a calibrated tamper like this one. You should inspect the puck after you tamper and see if it's evenly pressed. This tamp is wrong. It's off on one side. I purposely did it like this so you guys can see what a wrong tamping would look like. This tamp is great. This is what you should aim for. Once you figure out that your tamping is great, you're ready to start pulling your shot. A little side note, if your portafilter isn't spotless, make sure to give it a little wipe on the ring and also on the wings to make sure there's no coffee grounds left on it. Pulling the shot. Hopefully by the time you put your coffee grounds in the portafilter, your espresso machine is nice and hot and it's ready for you to pull the shot in it. Pull a small blank shot if you'd like to clean off your machine a little bit. This means you would just run a little bit of hot water without the portafilter being locked in. You'll need to time your shot somehow. Some espresso machines have their own timer that's built in, but if yours doesn't, just use your phone or something. Like we've discussed before, the perfect time for pulling an espresso shot is about 25 seconds. You can go as high as 30 seconds and as low as 20 seconds, but try to stay within that range because if you go outside of that, you might find some unpleasant flavors that will be in your espresso shot. Lock the portafilter into your machine. Place your demi-tasses under the spouts. Then press the start button. If your machine has a pre-infusion function, then it'll go through that first and then it'll start the extraction. If your machine doesn't have that function, then just press the start button, hold it for 2 to 3 seconds. Then stop the machine for 3 seconds to let the ground soak. Start the brew button again, and then start your timer once you see the first drop of espresso coming out. You should have about 1 fluid ounce for the 7 grams of coffee, or about 30 grams if you scale it. There's a strong chance that your first espresso is not going to turn out perfect. Don't worry about it. Just follow this extraction guide and you'll be able to perfect it in no time. So what does this table tell us? For one thing is, if your shot is flowing too slowly, it means it's too fine, so you'll need a coarser grind. If it's too fast, it means it's too coarse, so you'll just need to grind it a little bit more finely. At Brew Espresso Coffee, we don't really recommend this trick, but it's a tool for you to keep in mind in case you do decide to use it. If you want to slow down the flow of your shot, you can tamp it a little bit harder, or you could even add some extra coffee in your portafilter. Some other things to consider when you're tweaking your shot. Coffee grinders retain a small amount of coffee in the burrs. You might want to throw out the first few grams of coffee after you adjust the grind size. Change one thing at a time. If you want to go against our advice and use dose and tamping to change the flow of your shot, then please just change one thing at a time so that you can really understand how it changes your shot and how it affects it. This will end up saving you a lot of time in the end. Make small adjustments unless the flow is really off. Conclusion. As a conclusion, I'd like to point out that it's very unlikely that you'll get your first espresso shot perfectly. Even super experienced baristas need to tweak their espresso shot if they change the coffee or the machine. So don't worry if your first shot doesn't turn out perfect. For beginners, these adjustments are not super obvious, so they'll need a little bit more time to adjust and to figure out what the perfect grind size is. Espresso is about personal taste, so keep playing with the recipe until it's perfect for you. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below and we'll make sure to answer your questions. If you love espresso, feel free to subscribe. Thanks again. Bye!